Good evening and welcome to the Planning Commission meeting of Monday, March 27, 2023. I now call the meeting to order and I will ask Commissioner Zick to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Commissioner Zick. Anna, roll call, please.
Chair Arith.
Present.
Vice Chair Toller.
Here.
Commissioner Rojas. Commissioner Zick.
Here.
Commissioner Andrade.
Here.
Commissioner Vivar.
Present.
Commissioner Tabor.
Here.
Thank you. We have no announcements or presentations tonight, so this brings us to public comments. These are for items that are not listed on the agenda but are within our jurisdiction, and I will now open the public comment. And if you'd like to speak, you're welcome to approach either podium. Please do keep in mind that you have 3 minutes, and I understand that there may be Spanish-speaking services required this evening. I'm not sure if it's for this portion of public comment or for a specific item, but if anyone in the audience needs Spanish translation, if you'd like to raise your hand, we can offer that this evening as well. Seeing no one, we'll go ahead and revisit that till later on. So yeah, anyone in the audience wish to make public comment on items that are not on the agenda? Yes, sir.
This is my first time here. My name is Marco Argueta, and this is regarding the application for a dispensary next to my office.
If I can just hold off 1 sec, sir. Is this for an item that we're going to be hearing this evening?
Well, I hope so.
Okay, if it's on the agenda, then we're going to go ahead and open it up for public comment later on for that particular item.
Thank you.
So thank you, sir. All right, seeing no one else in the audience, Anna, can we go to Zoom or telephone?
No, there's not, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. This brings us to Planning Commissioner comments and suggestions, and I'll go ahead and start with Commissioner Tabor. Okay, Commissioner Vivar.
Yes, I received something in the mail about a little community event that was hosted at the future location of Northgate Markets on Harbor Boulevard near Harbor and Wilson. It's been a project and a long time coming. I unfortunately was not able to make it to the community meeting, but I'm looking forward to attending this meeting I believe it's on April 22nd. So interesting project, and I'm sure that a lot of the Spanish-speaking community will also know Northgate Markets. Yeah, that's all I have for today, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Vivar. Commissioner Zick.
No new suggestions or requests or PowerPoints. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Andrade.
Yeah, to echo Commissioner Vivar's comments, yeah, I was able to go to the Northgate community event. It was really well attended and it was really engaging. So commend the team at the Northgate space to set up. It was family oriented. Anyways, it was great. It was really also awesome to see the new scope on what this market is going to bring to our community. So really exciting. Looking forward to it.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Andrade. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We learned just a few weeks ago that the state of California is holding back a big chunk of the Fairview Developmental Center, which is inside Costa Mesa Golf Course. They're holding back 15 acres the plan is to build an emergency operations center that will serve Southern California. So they're preparing the environmental impact report for this project, and the deadline to submit comments is on Friday. The comments are intended to inform what they study, the scope of what they're going to be studying. So any environmental impacts that you might be thinking about in the middle of our city. It's going to be a 35,000 square foot office building and a 20,000 square foot warehouse, I believe, which includes a helicopter landing. And I don't know the details, but any information, if you guys want to look that up, it's on a website I'm going to give you. So project information and the place to submit your comments. Again, last chance is this Friday, oesregionsoutheoc.org. Say it one more time, oesregionsoutheoc.org. You can find information on that project and submit your comments there by this Friday, the 21st. Also, tomorrow night, there is a bicycle wayfinding signage project that's open to the public. It's going to be a Zoom meeting Tuesday, tomorrow night, 6 p.m. You can find that Zoom link on the city calendar, city social media. I encourage you to go to that. That's it.
All right. Thank you, Vice Chair. And I'll wrap it up in maybe making a little bit of a selfish statement in that I have not one but two basketball teams that are in the NCAA tournament right now. I have men's San Diego State, and I have, if in the next few minutes it holds, the South Carolina women's basketball team, both going to the Final Four. So can I just wish them all luck on behalf of everyone here? Thank you, and that's all for me. So that brings us to the consent calendar tonight. We have a couple items, starting with the February 28, 2022 minutes and the June 27, 2022 minutes. Anna, I don't know if you need to read that into the record or if we can just start discussing it. Yeah? Okay.
February 28th, 2022 unofficial meeting minutes.
Okay. Commissioners, any comments, revisions on February 28th minutes?
I have a quick question for staff, if I may.
Sure.
So on the February 28th minutes for 2022, the minutes included the appointment of Diane Russell to the Housing and Grants Committee, and this Diane Russell is no longer in Planning Commission. Will the Planning Commission at some point need to make an appointment to that committee out of one of the commissioners that's currently serving?
Commissioner, I can answer that. Yes, we intend for a reappointment to that liaison to the committee to come before the Planning Commission, and we're still working on the timing of that, but we expect it to be in the next few meetings.
All right, thank you, Ms. Lee. And that's it for me, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Vivar. Any others? All right, seeing none, let's go ahead and open it up to making a motion. Anyone like to make a motion? I'll go ahead and make the motion to approve the minutes as written. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner I think you need to hit it one more time. Got it. Seconded by Commissioner Vivar. I have no comments. Any comments, Commissioner Vivar? None. Okay, if we can bring it to vote.
That motion carries 5-0 with Commissioner Rojas absent and Commissioner Tabor abstaining.
Okay, thank you, Anna. If we can read the second minutes in, please.
Consent calendar item number 2, June 27th, 2022 unofficial meeting minutes.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, any comments or revisions? All right, seeing none, would anyone like to make the motion? I'll go ahead and make, motion by Vivar. I'll go ahead and second. Commissioner Vivar, do you have any comments?
No, just making the motion to approve minutes as is. Thank you.
Okay, and I second that with no further observation, so we can call the question.
That motion carries 5-0 with Commissioner Rojas absent and Commissioner Tabor abstaining.
All right, thank you, Anna. This brings us to public hearings. We have 2 public hearing items this evening. Nana, if you'd please read the title for public hearing item number 1, I'd appreciate it.
Public hearing item number 1, planning application 21-39 for a conditional use permit to operate a retail cannabis storefront business located at 770 West 19th Street, Nabrina. Please note we have received public comments on this item that have been provided to the commission and made a part of the record. This is a call for any ex parte communications.
All right, thank you, Anna. We'll go ahead and start to my right. Commissioner Zick,
Nothing.
Commissioner Andrade. Okay, Vice Chair.
Nope.
Commissioner Vivar.
Yes, I did have a couple conversations with members of the public. Muchas gracias por llegar a la junta hoy. But I will need to recuse myself from the item as I have an ownership interest in my family's business, Paradise Beauty Salon, located at 789 West 19th Street and located within the 500-foot radius of the subject property at 770 West 19th Street.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner, and you're welcome to get up after we take stock of all this. Commissioner Tabor? No. Okay, and I have a few to report. Starting today, I said hello to the applicants, so that was in person. I also held a call on Sunday with Mr. Brandon Banks for about 5 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes, I guess. And I also talked to a representative from the UFCW on this item as well. So with that said, I will now turn it over to Ms. Nguyen to present the item, and Commissioner Vivar, we'll call you back when we're ready.
Okay. Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Nancy Nguyen, Senior Planner with the Economic and Development Services Department. The item before you tonight is Planning Application 21-39, which is a request for a conditional use permit to establish a retail cannabis dispensary, which is a state license type 10. The applicant is not proposing to offer retail delivery at this location, so it would just be a request for a storefront. The proposed business name is Nabrina. Sorry, I should have started the slides. So to date, the city has approved 16 CUPs for a retail cannabis storefront and has denied 1 CUP. The approved ones are shown here in the green dots, and the denied one is shown in the orange dot. And the pending CUPs, which will be presented tonight, are noted in blue. And the project that I am presenting at the moment is outlined in the dash red box here. As the commission may already be familiar, this is the cannabis business application process. And the applicant has successfully completed the initial steps, which include the pre-application, as well as the cannabis business permit, or CBP, before they submitted a CUP application. So if the CUP is approved tonight, the applicant would then continue on to the remaining steps, including the issuance of the CBP. As mentioned, the proposed storefront is located at 770 West 19th Street, which is highlighted in these 2 images in red. So the subject property is zoned C1, which is the local business district commercial zone. As you can see, it is also surrounded by other commercially zoned properties. Existing development on the property consists of 2 detached single-story buildings. The main building is approximately 2,000 square feet, which is the front building here. And there is a rear building used for storage that is approximately over 1,000 square feet. However, that rear storage building was expanded without building permits. And as such, the applicant is proposing to demolish the entire rear structure in order to improve the on-site circulation, as well as provide additional parking spaces. So these photos do show the existing condition of the property. The building is currently occupied by a landscaping supply store, and the property does include existing landscaping and parking spaces, and both of which would be improved with the proposed project. The proposed site plan here includes 12 parking spaces, including credit for 1 bicycle rack, and new landscaping including 2 24-inch box trees. The driveway entrance on West 19th Street, as well as the exit on Palace Avenue, are both one-way, and they would remain as existing. The existing chain link fence that's along Palace Avenue would be replaced with a wrought iron to match the existing one at the front along West 19th. Both gates along the driveways would remain open during normal business hours, and that's as conditioned in the CUP. The proposed floor plans includes 2 major areas, the retail sales area shown in green and the back of house area shown in red. The facility has 1 public customer entrance and 1 employee-only entrance for, 1 access-controlled entrance for employees as well as licensed vendors. So in terms of the exterior improvements, the applicant does propose to modernize the existing facade with new decorative lighting, paint, horizontal wood slat siding. This is in addition to repaving and restriping the existing surface parking lot and providing new landscaping. The applicant did provide a detailed business plan that was evaluated by the city's cannabis consultant, HDL. It is not attached to the staff report since it contains proprietary details. However, the business plan does describe the owner's professional experience and proof of capitalization. In addition to the business plan, the applicant also provided a security plan, which was also reviewed by HDL. HDL did determine that the appropriate security measures were included to address the city and state requirements. Like the other retail cannabis CUPs presented before the commission, there are more than 50 standard conditions of approval, including no on-site consumption, age restrictions, compliance with state regulations, and reminders relating to the renewal of the CBP. And in addition to the standard conditions, staff has also included site-specific ones. Since the subject does abut an existing residential zoned property, several conditions of approval were included to ensure land use compatibility, and those include posting signs in the parking lot to remind customers to use consideration when entering and exit the premise, requiring an employee to monitor the parking lot, and requiring lighting layout to be designed in a way to prevent light spill to the residential property. So staff recommends that the Planning Commission adopt a resolution to find that the project is categorically exempt from the provisions of the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA, as well as approve planning application 21-39, subject to the conditions of approval. That does conclude staff's presentation. The applicant has also prepared one for the commission tonight, and we're both available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Ms. Nguyen. Commissioners, any questions for staff?
I have a quick question. So, when we talk about the walkability of the city, is there an opportunity to have our business owners to support that effort and plant some trees along their storefronts, or is there very specific landscape requirements that are expected of them?
So the CUP plans did include a conceptual landscape plan. That's something that staff would review further in plan check. But if the commission would like, can always modify or add additional conditions as it relates to more landscaping than what is already conceptually shown on the landscape plan.
Yeah, I mean, if that's an opportunity, I mean, right, as we think about the bigger picture of what we want Costa Mesa to be more heavily foot trafficked, it's hard to do so if there's that glaring, intense sun during the summer months, right? So that's kind of the reason why a lot of people don't walk, because it's just unbearable. So incorporating that in these business plans, I think, would be an awesome way to kind of set that habit so that you got a storefront along a sidewalk, make it a tree instead of a bush. I don't know.
So
Just
I apologize, I didn't mean to cut you off. The conceptual landscape plan do show one 24-inch box tree at the front of the property.
Okay.
And then one other one towards the back of the property. But staff can definitely work with the applicant during plan check to perhaps provide more trees in the front of the property.
Fantastic. Awesome.
Thank you, Commissioner Andrade. Commissioner Zick?
No questions of staff. I'll have a question for the applicant, but I would like to thank Ms. Nguyen for a comprehensive report.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Tabor?
I just agree with Commissioner Andrade that Area 6 on A1.0, A1.1 in the color representation of, potential landscaping kind of look like AstroTurf or something. And coming off the street there, it just really doesn't seem to lend itself towards beautification of the city. And I don't know if there's an intent there not to block the storefront so people could more easily see it. But I agree that a tree would be nice.
Yes, thank you for that comment. If I could point you to sheet L 1.0, is the conceptual landscape plan. Unfortunately, the trees and shrubs detail were not shown on the proposed site plan.
This?
I believe it's where you're looking at. It's towards the end of the package, the second to last sheet.
Oh, E 1.0?
L 1.0.
So those white circles would be trees?
It's a combination of trees and shrubs.
So to Commissioner Andrade's point, which
We can
is,
definitely,
like,
so commission can definitely provide, or excuse me, include another condition of approval for additional trees or more mature trees or other types of, whichever size trees commission feels appropriate to be planted at the front.
yeah, as long as that color graphic didn't really represent what was actually going to happen, then maybe it's cool, but I noticed the same thing that Commissioner Andrade noticed, that as shown, it leaves a lot that could improve upon, That's it.
Hey, thank you, Commissioner Tabor. Vice Chair?
I have no questions.
Okay, thank you. So maybe to build off of Commissioner Andrade's initial point and then Commissioner Tabor's additional commentary, I'm trying to think back when we first started hearing these items. There was some discussion about being water wise and using California natives, California plants, which are typically shrubs and kind of ground cover of sorts. Has that been your understanding up to this point?
Yes, and typically in reviewing the conceptual plans, the conceptual landscape plans, staff does work with the applicant to ensure that they are either drought tolerant or California natives. And it's also conditioned in the projects, and we do review that during plan check.
Okay, and I'm not a tree specialist, so I apologize, everyone, but I do believe that there are some trees that would check that box potentially, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay, all right, thank you. Director Dropkin, did you want to?
Oh, I was just going to say that that Palo Verde is definitely an Arizona drought tolerant tree.
Okay, great. Thank you. We have our tree expert here, everyone. Thank you. I will also move it on to page 14 of the agenda report. And I want to hold a brief discussion about the billboard, if we can. So it's my understanding with, I believe it's condition number 6 for building permits, that the billboard cannot have any depiction in characterization or word that would indicate that there's cannabis on site. And I guess my further question is, would that also apply to off-site cannabis businesses that would want to advertise on that billboard as well? So is it just no cannabis at all on that billboard?
At this point, the condition is for all.
For all, okay, thank you. And I'd like to mention that I held a call with our transportation engineer here in the city earlier, Ms. Rosales, and I asked a series of questions about the ingress egress of the site. And I've come to learn that there is one point of ingress, one point of egress. So I did confirm that, and that there was also some a high likelihood that there would be signage that would accompany that circulation on site as well. So people who would want to enter through the exit would be told that this is an exit, people, and similarly for the other way around as well. So for anyone who had any circularity type questions or circulation type questions about this, that's my understanding. And Ms. Nguyen, if you want to.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you so much. All right. And I think with that, I have no other questions. Does anyone else? Nope, seeing none. Commissioner Tabor, sorry.
The DG in the parking lot in the back, is that something they drive over?
Turn your mic.
A little house copy? Or am I not really know?
Staff, we're looking at sheet L 1.0.
Yeah, I think that's a mistake. What that's supposed to be is concrete, and it's there for the trash cans. So when you're rolling the large trash cans back and forth. Yeah, yeah. So I believe that's a plan mistake. We can confirm that with the applicant, but
Yeah, the applicant's architect is also available tonight, too.
typically that area is shown in concrete. So when you're rolling those large, heavy trash cans back and forth, it doesn't cut into the asphalt. But you're absolutely correct. It does say DG, but I think it's an error.
The area between the parking spot and that stuff, that's super hard to drive over that concrete.
Yeah, it's just a small little, it's barely raised, if anything at all, yeah. So, okay, sure.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Tabor. Seeing no other questions, Director Dropkin, Ms. Nguyen, Ms. Lee, thank you so much for answering our questions. And I'll now move on to open up the public hearing and ask the applicant to come up, or the applicant's representative. And if you could, please state your name for the record and let us know if you've read the staff report and the conditions of approval, and do you agree?
Good evening, Commission and City staff. My name is Brandon Banks. I am the CEO of Nebrina Costa Mesa. I have indeed read the plans and recommendations.
Okay, thank you. Well, the floor is yours if you'd like to make a presentation, sir.
Okay, thanks again for having me and my team here this evening. I will keep this pretty brief presentation. We can move to the next slide. Again, my name is Brandon Banks. I am the CEO of Nebrina Costa Mesa. I also have along with me Colin Madden, our Chief Operations Officer, Ashley Block, who's interfaced with a lot of the city staff. She's our Chief Compliance Officer, and our local Measure X partner, Expando Products, are here as well. Combined, we have over 30 years of regulated experience in the cannabis industry, operating several licenses in not only California, but also Colorado, also have achieved licensure in Massachusetts and Illinois. Next slide, please. We've reviewed a bit of the site, 770 West 19th Ave. As you guys know, it is appropriately zoned, 11 parking stalls, 1 ADA compliant space, and a bike rack. Next slide, please. Again, we've kind of reviewed a lot of the site. Nancy did a great job there. We can skip over to the next slide. Once again, our proposed site plan, you will enter into the rear of the building. As you'll see in subsequent slides, we like to present an open sort of floor plan, a modern aesthetic, safety and security is going to be paramount as well. Next slide, please. The existing facility has Pacific Sprinkler Supply. They will be relocating. Our company is going to help them relocate into a larger, more appropriate space once we have the ability, if we're allowed to move forward with this cannabis license. We also have a letter of support from the owner of the business. Next slide, please. Here's some interior renderings, some conceptual renderings. Again, we really like to provide a high-end sort of retail aesthetic, sort of an open floor plan, well-designed, well-lit, certainly does not appeal to minors, sort of part of our core principles around our design. Next slide. Here's some of the exterior rendering. I will note that that is not AstroTurf, and we are certainly open to adding some more shade trees. We're very sensitive to the needs of the community as far as walkability and the need for shade. So certainly as we move on into the next phases of design, we will take all of that into consideration. Next slide. Just to give you an idea of the proposed color schemes and palettes, again, just more so you guys can get a feel for what we're looking to accomplish in the space. As I mentioned, we do have 11 parking spaces, 1 ADA. We will always have a parking attendant on site and 1 space reserved for shipments, shipping and receiving. No delivery again with our license type. Some of the lighting improvements, again, I will note that you guys have conditions on the type and the use in the photometric plan, which we will be adhering to if allowed to proceed. Thank you. Next slide. As I mentioned, the conceptual sort of plan was to go with drought-tolerant, drought-resistant plants that fit with the natural landscaping. Again, we're going to be sensitive to the needs for shade and for improving pedestrian access to the site. So we would take all of those into consideration as we refine this design a bit more. Just to give you guys a bit of an idea about the security and surveillance, we will have a licensed security personnel on site 24 hours a day. We do a double ID check. So there is an identification check as soon as you enter our premises to make sure you are of age, 21 and up. And again, a secondary check before you're able to receive your product. Have a strong anti-loitering policy, very strong communication with police, intrusion, theft prevention, and certainly SOPs around safety and emergency preparedness. Again, as far as our surveillance, all entrances and exits to and from our premises are going to be monitored with an on-site DVR that adheres to all local and state standards. All interior spaces within our business that are open and access to the public will be monitored. All of our interior spaces with cannabis or cash will also be heavily monitored. And again, we're going to make sure that there's no diversion on site as far as our core security principles. Next slide. As far as odor control, we will not be packaging cannabis on site, so there's no processing or packaging on site. Staff is going to be trained around all of our odor control mechanisms and controls, which include HVAC upgrades, carbon filters, and we'll potentially even use a certified industrial hygienist to make sure that we minimize all of the sources of odor. Next slide. As part of our community outreach, I personally, along with my leadership team, went door to door and canvassed. We visited and spoke with our neighboring businesses. We had bilingual notifications, both in English and Spanish. We did receive several sort of signs and letters of support, and we were very respectful of no solicitation signs in the neighborhood. But we did our best to go next door within 500 feet of all the businesses and residences. These are just sample notices, again, both in English and in Spanish. They reference the fact that we held 3 community meetings. One was in person at the Holiday Inn, and we did 3 subsequent meetings via Zoom, just in case folks weren't able to attend that in-person meeting. Again, just photos from our community outreach meeting. We did not have anyone in there dissenting against our program, and in fact, no one has reached out to me personally with any concerns. So we're looking forward to being part of a community. Next slide. Part of our core principles as far as operational-wise is we try to hire locally, specifically. We pay a living wage between 23 and 24 an hour, always opportunities for continuing education, career growth, and advancement. One of the things that we do that's unique to us is offer paid volunteer days, specifically if you're volunteering with nonprofits that are local to our Costa Mesa community, subsidized health insurance we offer, and I think we plan to create anywhere between 15 and 25 new jobs with this facility. With that, I thank you guys for your time, and I will open it up for questions.
All right, Mr. Banks, thank you so much. Quick question just right off the bat. I'm not sure if I didn't catch it or not. Did you read the conditions of approval and agree to them?
I did read the conditions of approval, and I do agree.
Okay, thank you very much. So with that, commissioners, do you have any questions of the applicant, starting with Commissioner Zick?
Thank you, Mr. Banks, for your presentation. I've got a couple questions for you. First of all, what is Nebrina?
Nebrina just happens to be the street that I moved to in Colorado when I embarked on this journey some 15 years ago. At that time, it was medical cannabis, and I moved into a house on Nebrina Avenue in Boulder, Colorado. So it's just kind of started on this journey, and that's the name.
Okay, good reason. Did you Google Nebrina to figure out why they named a street that?
I did not, honestly.
Okay.
Hopefully it's nothing controversial. I need to go do that.
You got some homework then. You talk about public outreach, and your slide indicated that you also met with residential. I was looking at the diagram that you provided, that you titled Canvassing Map, and I just noted that the red lines and your indication on page 6 looked like you talked to a lot of businesses. And I was particularly interested, what residential area or areas did you visit, and were you successful in connecting with any residents?
We're very successful with the business community. I will note that most of the apartment complexes, there were 2 that are sort of abutting, had very distinct no solicitation signs.
Okay.
So we were very respectful of that.
Okay, thank you for that. And then we received one submittal from the public. I don't know if the individual is here or not, in opposition. And one of the things they point out, and I've heard this before, but I'm going to be interested in your reaction to this, and I've got a question, but they're concerned about the overabundance of cannabis stores. I think in their mind, 1 might be enough, 2 might be enough, but as you know, there are more than that in the city and more coming. So my question to you is, what is, to the extent you're willing to talk about it, what do you feel is your competitive advantage to all the other cannabis stores that are really in fairly close proximity to yours? Is it product offerings that no one else has, cheaper prices that nobody else can compete with? What is your business's competitive advantage?
I think some of the competitive advantages are the fact that a lot of these cannabis operators here in California are part of larger chains. I'm a relatively small operator in most states we operate in. I have 1 or 2 stores, which allows me to go and select specifically, and our team to select specifically products and choices that are tailored to the individuals and in our community. I personally, I'm a minority, like to support small businesses, minority-owned businesses. I have a strong focus on that, not only through product selection, but also through employment and employees and benefits. So we really try to focus on the little guy. You know, I'm a little guy. I'm not a big operator. I've had a fair amount of success, but as part of our core values, we try to prop up and support smaller operators, whether they're local or whether they're regional.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Zick. Commissioner Andrade? No? Okay. Commissioner Tabor?
How do you market the stores with the regulations of, you know, not having signage per se that really let people know it's there? How do you get the word out?
You know, initially it's the traditional means. You know, there's 2 main apps that most folks are using. You know, of course, SEO via Google, but most folks use Weed Maps. You know, that's to locate and identify new stores. And once you have them visit once, then it's word of mouth. Then it's all about customer service, product selection, variety, and making sure you have an exceptional customer experience, and then word spreads. So there is a bit of a ramp-up period, but initially, most of this traffic is drawn specifically online-based, or app-based, I should say.
So To Commissioner Vick's comment, Zick, sorry. Looks like there's 17 stores in somewhat close proximity, and I know there's other hamburger joints or whatever in close proximity. So, you know, competition usually wins out, superior product or whatever. Is there the possibility of a drive to kind of undercut competitors, and what happens like to profitability when there's so many stores in the same market?
I'm not going to lie, it's a tough industry, particularly over the last couple of years. You know, I think what smaller, more niche operators such as myself have to do is really kind of have to carve out a lane. You know, again, I guess one of the main benefits of us versus a larger operator is they're tied to specific products. They're tied to things that they're cultivating, and all of them are vertically integrated, so they have to carve out shelf space for specifically their product. We don't have any of those limitations. We can go out and pick not only the best selling, but the brands that resonate with us as a company, resonate with me as an owner and me as a small business person. So that, along with good customer service and a quality customer experience, I think we can carve out a nice niche. I will say that our dispensary is located a little bit off the beaten path. Quite a few of them are along the same drag, and we're a little bit off the not necessarily beaten path, but I think there's a little less competition in our geographic area. So I do think we have a competitive advantage there. But I think as a nimble, lean, small operator, I think we can carve out a niche here.
So with the security plan on people not consuming the product, on site, how far does that go? Like, can someone literally walk into that parking lot with the apartments right behind your complex and consume product, or what's the oversight there?
I mean, the oversight is specifically within our property lines. We have very limited reach if someone goes outside of our gates, walks next door, enters their gates, and, goes inside their sort of community, so to say. I don't necessarily think we can police that. If it is an issue and a nuisance and it's certainly impacting our business, then, we're going to have our security team speak up and say, hey, guys, come on, So we're going to be good neighbors in that regard. I don't know the extent to which we can police what folks do on their own property, but we are absolutely going to be stewards of what happens on our property.
Yeah, because I was looking at the map and seeing that the actual complex for that apartment behind you guys is a little offset from your parking lot, which is nice for them. But I could see living there, being somewhat concerned about people walking 3 feet away and starting to consume behind that fence. Maybe that's more of a city question. I don't know.
If it's something as blatant as us seeing a customer leave our facility with something they've purchased and walk directly from our parking lot and make a beeline over there and start, now that's a different matter, right? Now we have clear evidence of some wrongdoing, and I think we'd be able to call the local authorities and let them know, and ban them specifically from our store. So those would be the steps we'll take. If you're talking to a customer going upstairs to their units, and that's when it gets a little dicey.
Yeah. Well, hey, congratulations going through the process. I know it's rigorous, and thank you for making the presentation.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Tabor. Vice Chair.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about pedestrian access?
Yeah, absolutely. Pedestrians, as you guys know, the street is a wide boulevard and it has 2 streets, so pedestrian access isn't the best. With our on-site security and with customer education, we're going to make sure that folks are only crossing the street at those crosswalks. Might be a pain for some folks who are kind of, coming across 19th. They're going to have to walk to the nearest crosswalk, but I think that's going to be incredibly important. The last thing we want is someone parking across the street, cutting across the, 4 lanes of traffic to enter our facility. So we've kind of thought about that and ways to educate our consumers and specifically let them know if you're not going to park, use public transportation, use the bike racks, use the other methods that we're providing.
To actually get in the building, is the pedestrian pathway through the driveway? Is everyone in the same? Yeah.
Yep.
And that gate's going to be open during business hours?
Correct.
That's the plan? Okay. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I guess one of the outcomes of being the anchor on a commission is that all your good questions get taken. So I'm looking at what I have left here. Thank you, Mr. Banks. Can you tell me a little bit about your labor peace agreement that you have in place? Do you have anything in place as of yet?
Nothing's in place as of yet. We do not have the employees, of course, but as soon as we get 10 employees, we're not only have a labor peace agreement, but a collective bargaining agreement as well.
Okay.
So we do plan to work with local unions, and we've chatted with union reps in the past out here, so they're familiar with us and other states that operate in. We're very union friendly.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And I think I'll just make one comment in that it's my understanding that messaging does not have, when you have to message the public, it does not have to be in Spanish. And I do personally and professionally appreciate that you went to that length to do that. I think that's a very fine thing.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that, I think that's all, unless anyone else has, okay. All right, thank you very much, Mr. Banks. I will now open up the public comments, and if you'd like to speak to this item, please approach the podium on either side. But before you do, let me just get a temperature check real quick. Is there anyone in the audience who requires Spanish-speaking translation or English translation? If you could please raise your hand. All right, seeing none. So is there anyone in chambers who wishes to speak to this item? You're welcome to come up to either podium, please. Yeah.
Yeah, my name is Kevin Rager. I live within the 500 meter radius, I guess, or whatever you guys sent out. I wanted to point out on 19th Street, basically within 1 mile from Harbor, excluding Triangle Square, we already have, I believe, 5 bars and nightclubs, or it's 5 liquor stores, 3 smoke shops. We have a soup kitchen with a liquor store in the parking lot, basically. Now we're adding a cannabis store all within a 500 meter radius, basically, if you take that one corner. But if you include the entire 1 mile of Harbor Boulevard down 19th Street. So I'm all about downtown and improving downtown. I just had my son's birthday this weekend. Wahoo's parking lot has a guy sleeping in it right now. So the homeless concern is definitely there. So you're basically adding free food, liquor, and cannabis all in the same location. And in that 1 mile, there's 8 schools. You talk about walkability. Has anyone done a study about how many families walk to those grocery stores? El Matate, one of the only Mexican grocery stores in the area, how much of the residents walk by at what will now be a cannabis store within 200 feet of a smoke shop? I mean, don't get me wrong, I appreciate, I'm an entrepreneur myself. I have a business in Costa Mesa, and I do support cannabis in general, but keep it in the areas away from residents, keep it in the areas away from the schools, away from the walkability. You know, that little guy right there, that's the guy that will be seeing this every day, walking to Smart and Final from my house, and you can hear it in my voice. So I want to improve my area with the right kinds of businesses, and I do not believe that this is one of those types of businesses for this guy. So I appreciate it. That's my comments.
Right. Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else? Yes, sir. And if there's anyone else in the audience who wishes to speak, you're welcome to line up on either side here. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners and staff. My name is Craig Litwin, and I'm here in support of the project and this application. I've worked in this industry as an advocate since 2008. I served on a city council from 2000 to 2008 and co-authored one of the first medical cannabis dispensary ordinances in the state. And one of the big things in kind of acknowledging the speaker previous, and your cup's up here too, by the way, sir. But the previous speaker, keeping it out of the hands of minors is the key. That's why we create the regulated industry, because you need identifications. There are security plans. There are cameras. There's no acceptance for diversion. That you'd be kicked out of the dispensary if that happens. So just as someone who's been in this industry for some time, I can say that the regulation is the best tool that we have to stop it getting into the hands of minors. And I absolutely, as a father myself, respect the previous speaker's positions. I've watched a lot of applicants do work, and I can say that these guys, putting this out in Spanish, having community meetings, pledging to give money to and time, the volunteers, right, paying staff to do that. That's incredible. That's a community benefit that you don't always see, and it's really above and beyond the call of duty. In addition, there's an advocacy group, Orange County Normal, who they're members, they're business members, supporting members of that, and that's all about making sure the consumer is looked out for. Because the other thing that regulated cannabis brings is a clarity of product. It brings a guarantee that there aren't molds and contaminants, fungus, heavy metals in the product that cancer patients, AIDS patients, people with PTSD, rely upon for their medicine. So it's not just a recreational substance, but this regulatory process also allows for that peace of mind for the true medical patient to enjoy it in a way that's they know they're going to be okay. I'll leave my comments there, and again, thank you for your consideration. I'm in full support.
Okay, thank you, sir. Is there anyone else in the public who wishes?
Did he just leave? The man with the cup?
Just ran out.
Okay.
But it is someone's cup.
All right, thank you.
All right, is there anyone else in chambers who wishes to speak? Yes, ma'am.
To the Planning Commission Chair and Planning Commission. My name is Catherine Young, and I'm a very concerned citizen and property owner. It was brought to my attention, this cannabis store, and there was one reason that I should be concerned is there is a music academy that's very close to this proposed cannabis store. And minors and teenagers attend this site. So I just want the commission to be aware that we need to protect the environment of our community and that we should have a certain distance away, and I think it's less than 100 feet. I'm not completely sure it's 100, but it's close, it's in close proximity. So at least consider it. I know there's residents and there are people who are not aware of what's going on, but just being aware to protect our children, I came to urge the commission to deny it. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone else in chambers? All right, seeing none. Anna, if we want to go to Zoom first.
No, there's not, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Phone?
No, there's not, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. So with that said, I'm going to close the public comment portion of the public hearing and turn to my fellow commissioners and see if you'd like to ask any further questions for the applicant. All right, seeing none, I have no questions either. Mr. Banks, if you'd like to come up here, please. If you'd like to make any closing remarks, you're certainly welcome to if you'd like. But you don't have to. Okay, all right, that's fine. Thank you. All right. Commissioners, do you have any further questions of staff? Yes, Commissioner Tabor.
Nancy, is there anything where like the applicants do like a direct mail piece? Because I understand there was like no solicitation and he wanted to respect that, but was there direct mail to the residents in the area?
Yes, Commissioner Tabor, every project that requires a planning commission or public hearing, there is a public notice that is mailed out to the residents as well as the tenants and of the residential or commercial properties within 500 feet of the property or the project site.
Cool, thank you.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Tabor. Anyone else? All right. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Nancy, was there any, this woman said about this music academy, is that something we're aware of or?
So the separation requirements from the sensitive uses, we review that during the pre-application. So the applicant cannot move on to the next steps of the cannabis business permit application process until they have demonstrated that they have a property that meets the separation requirements.
So it's already reviewed? And,
correct.
Since this process takes a long time, is there ever instances where they've kind of vetted the area as being, able,
Yeah.
and then someone moves in that makes it not compliant or whatever?
That's a great question. So in our per the zoning code, they have to meet the property that is selected for a storefront has to meet the separation requirement at the time that they submit a complete cannabis business permit.
Thank you.
It's actually an excellent question, Commissioner Tabor. In fact, the next hearing item has that exact situation.
All right, thank you all. Is that all, Commissioner Tabor? Welcome to. We're all equals here. Okay, that's fine. Thank you for bringing up that question, Commissioner Tabor. If anyone in the public is curious about the restrictions on buffers and distance requirements from sensitive uses, I encourage you to look at page 7 of the agenda report, and I'll go ahead and read it briefly, just so we're all on the same page. Under the heading Separation Requirements, it reads, Costa Mesa Municipal Code Section 13-200.93E stipulates that no cannabis retail storefront use shall be located within 1,000 feet from a K through 12 school, playground, licensed child daycare, or homeless shelter, or within 600 feet from a youth center as defined by Costa Mesa Municipal Code Title 9, Chapter 6, Section 9-485. And it goes on, and I could read this whole thing, but that's basically the meat of what we're talking about here. So thank you for bringing that up, Commissioner Tabor. I have no questions of staff either, so I will now close the public hearing, and I think we'll try something a little bit different tonight, seeing as how things are oftentimes pretty mechanical. If we'd like to have a little bit of a discussion up here just amongst ourselves before there's any motion, I'm happy to just have a conversation if we'd like. So if whoever wants to jump in.
Just do it. It's as an incoming commissioner, this is really, really exciting and quite an honor, really, to be sitting in this position and be part of the decision-making process of, expanding businesses and opportunities for business owners, residents, all of the above. And I really appreciate the staff sharing this map that clearly details kind of the volume of storefronts that we're seeing. And I guess it's just more of a greater question. I mean, these are fantastic applicants. They got their business and operations well described and detailed and kind of hit all the marks that we're looking for in new businesses being established. But I also want to be conscious of our resident that recently just spoke, right? Just the concerns, and we're trying to make this a tree city, walkable city in the 21st century and all that good stuff. But I get that, where it's a lot of what is the future of it looking like? Is it just a lovely corridor of fancy, beautiful front stores, cannabis front stores? So I guess, they're great applicants. They're meeting all the requirements. So I don't know. At what point do we have enough stores in these stretch? So, I know this is a conversation not for today, we're not going to get an answer today, but it's just kind of the bigger question, pressing this team or this commission and staff. So
Yeah, well, I think that's on a lot of people's minds, honestly. And it's a question that I think we'll continue to hear more information about through time. But, I was thinking about what you said earlier, Commissioner Andrade, where you were discussing the trees and that, we are a tree city, and I think we endeavor to be still. So I didn't know if you had any further thoughts on, at least for this particular location, about trees in the front, or if that's something that you wanted to, how heavily you wanted to weigh in on that.
Especially on the West 19th Street, that's such a heavily foot traffic area. I quickly Googled the kind of tree that we're proposing. So I appreciate that the applicant is open to doing something that provides greater shade, because what I Googled just looks really skimpy. Just having something lush that really allows for just some shade for bikers, because I know there's a lot of bike lanes coming up for the city, and if we want to make it more walkable, let's make it inviting. So I don't know if it's possible, but maybe include that in the upcoming applications that we see. It's just a robust, shade space so that people can actually walk around our city like we intend to do in our bigger master plan.
Yeah, no, it's a good observation, Commissioner Andrade. And when I hear bikeability, walkability, I have to admit that I think of Vice Chair Toller. So I don't know if he has any thoughts on this.
Okay, I'll chime in. Thank you. The first thing I noticed was the front door is gone from what was there to now. The front door off the sidewalk is gone. And I totally understand why the applicant did that. Most people will be driving in. If people are coming in from the sidewalk, they probably, they probably wouldn't be the customers. Most of the customers would want to come in through the back. But what I think, this is on us as a city. There seems to be a discrepancy between what we're trying to do on one hand, West 19th. If everybody imagines best case scenario, what's that going to look like in 20, 30 years? Like an urban boulevard, bustling, shade trees, people walking, bike lanes are going in a few months, I hear. There's a project on 19th and Wallace. I think it's 3 stories, kind of like a live-work type thing. I don't know exactly what it is. More of that sort of thing, apartments above, shops below. And then if you turn to page 2 of the staff report, I always think this is an interesting little thing that staff does, even though it's just a new business moving in. It's not a construction project. But to compare what's allowed and what's provided. And if you look at these standards, this is real easy to just flip over. But if you were to develop this site with something cool, something that would contribute to what I think is the vision for West 19th. We do have a West 19th plan. Nothing over 2 stories. Front setback 20 feet from the sidewalk. What's supposed to go there? I mean, it can't be like a front lawn. Like it is, right? But mowing the lawn on 19th Street's a little weird. We don't want parking in front. 26 from the rear. 8 on-site parking spaces for this tiny little site. So my point is there's a big discrepancy between what I think the general consensus is, what the vision is for this corridor, and what our development standards are resulting in. And this has nothing to do with the application before us, but when else are we going to talk about it? We're talking about this property right here. It is a facelift, and I think that's a good thing for all these things going around. It does make it look better. And I'm glad there's a bike rack. I'm glad pedestrians will, even though they're sharing space with the driveway, at least there is a way to get in. Yeah, that's my thought on that. I hope that we as a city can align our development standards, not only putting it on the applicant for when they move when a new business comes in, put the burden on them. To some extent, those are opportunities, but really we need to go behind the scenes and fix our codes. And so when new construction comes, yeah, trees are nice, bike racks are nice, wide sidewalks are nice, but it's really the buildings that create the space, that frame that public realm and create eyes on the street and opportunities to go in and out of those spaces. So those are my thoughts on walkability. Regarding public's hearing closed, so I could speak my mind freely now, right? We hear a lot about there being too many of these. And always in my mind, I think, well, what if there were too many hot dog places? Would we be saying the same comment? Would anybody have a problem with that if there were too many burger joints in town? How much is enough? This is a use. We can't tell what use it is. It's prohibited to see what the product even is. The product itself is, in my opinion, neither here nor there. This is a land use decision we're making. The voters, 2-1, voted to allow this use in the city. We established through several public, transparent meetings, Planning Commission, and most importantly, City Council, what the map would look like, where these would be allowed, what the sensitive uses would be, what the definitions of those would be, what the distances should be. I think people have good points. There's a music school. This is on a route to school. Those are totally valid. and I'm saying this as a father of little kids too, that lives in this city, but maybe the city council wants to revisit the map, revisit what those sensitive uses are, but after people have been, investing in these places for months and invested a lot of time and money, that's really tricky to me, and it makes me a little nervous. So those are my thoughts. I'll let someone else go.
Thanks, Vice Chair. I have to say, I'm enjoying the conversation a little bit more. I'm glad we're kind of beta testing this a bit, so hopefully we continue to do this. No, all wonderful points. I don't think we're in a position, not like anyone's asking, but we're not in a position to create a rider or pork barrel this thing so that we see certain visioning take place on 19th Street along with this application. But I think it does bring us to the point of, what part of the general plan do we need to revisit to accommodate for these pretty generous front and rear setbacks and limitations in height as well in an area that's otherwise, very commercial, very intense use. So other than that, I don't really have any other comments, but really enjoyed the conversation. So thank you very much. And it's still open if anyone else wants to speak. Commissioner Zick, Commissioner Tabor. All right, seeing none. So with that, go ahead and entertain a motion if anyone would like to make one. And Anna, if we can clear the board, please. Motion made by Vice Chair Toller.
I move that the Planning Commission adopt a resolution to find that the project is categorically exempt from the provisions of CEQA, Guideline Section 15301, and approve planning application 2139 subject to conditions of approval.
I will second the motion if you'd like to speak to your...
Sure, thank you. So I said what I thought about other things, but this application itself, like I said, this is a land use decision. What we're supposed to do is ensure that the findings can be made that this isn't going to be a nuisance. It's not going to pose a threat to the safety or general welfare or the health of the public. And I think there's this ongoing little bit of a misconception between what this is. But as I understand these, as these are conditioned, as they've been presented to us, as the evidence has been presented, I don't find this application to pose a threat to any of those things. Let me read from the municipal code, if anybody wants to look it up later, 13200.80. This is a special section in the code on smoking and vaping uses. And this is the thing that gets conflated with a lot of people. It says the city council finds that smoking and vaping uses have been associated with increased noise, loitering, odors, public nuisances, and disturbance of the peace. And it goes on from there. The gentleman that spoke earlier was talking, he lumped this kind of use in with dive bars, right? Liquor stores. We were imagining what he's talking about, right? This use, this cannabis use, is not the same thing as smoke shops. There's a smoke shop right next door. It's a different thing. And so that's why I can't find any reason to deny this application. That's all.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chair. I have very few comments on this other than to echo what you said, Vice Chair, in that there does not appear to be a nuisance here. I believe that the findings can be made as written. And I would request not a language change to the motion, but just the addition of a note to staff to see if this is something that you'd be open to strongly encourage the placement of a tree in the front landscaping. Is that something that you would be amenable to as a note to staff?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. All right. Are there, Commissioner Zick?
I'll be supporting the motion. I agree, this is a land use decision. We have 3 simple findings to make in order to approve this application. Substantially compatible, pretty easy, pretty straightforward. This won't be materially detrimental, health, safety, and welfare of the public. Pretty easy to see that's not an issue. And that the use will not allow a density or intensity not allowed by the general plan. That's real easy. It's a land use decision. The reason why it's a land use decision is nobody's asking us whether we like cannabis or don't like cannabis. Nobody's asking us that. Nobody's asking us if we like trees or don't like trees. The City Council has passed a whole host of policy decisions that are codified in the municipal code and ordinances that describe and define what this community is all about. And I don't think you came here for a sermon about what life ought to be for you or what life ought to be for me, because nobody's asking us for that. Is there a disconnect? Is there a discrepancy? Absolutely, there's a discrepancy. You hear some people say this ought to be a walkable, bikeable community, almost exclusively. Get rid of cars, get rid of parking lots. If you've been around and listened to some of the presentations and comments from up here, you've heard that. You want more sermons? We can give you more sermons, but that isn't why we're here. Are we a tree city? Yeah. We have landscaping setbacks? Yeah. People say, well, how come? Couldn't we build something on that instead of a landscaping setback? Yeah, if you don't care what the city looks like. We have parkways in front of residential homes. Do we care about those? Well, when we clog up the streets with parking because we have underparked developments all over the place, people pack their garages with junk instead of their vehicles. What do we need all these landscape parkways for? You can't even see them. You're lucky to find a parking place. You want sermons? This isn't the place for them. You want approval on an application that deserves an approval? You'll get that here, and you'll get that from me. Are we a family-friendly community? A lot of people think we are. The gentleman that spoke, he's concerned. Had his kid here, he left early. You know why? Because he's got a little kid to take care of. How many families do you see in here with their kids? Does that mean they support your business? Not necessarily. It means they're at home living their life. And whatever sermon we're given from up here is falling on deaf ears because they're working and living their own life. You're entitled to take a stab at the American dream with this business, and for your sake, I hope you're successful. That's why you're here. That's why your application is here. If you want another sermon, come back in 2 weeks.
Thank you, Commissioner Zick. Commissioner Tabor.
Yeah, man. Thanks for the presentation. I don't know if we're supposed to give sermons or not. I'm a little confused right now. I mean, can I get an hallelujah? Can I get an amen?
Amen.
But I will say, maybe there's 3 points of us approving it, but we're here because people of the community said they want a representation of Costa Mesa up here. And it's not just because of the letter of the law, it's because they think there's people over here that have some nice input. I'm so relieved that you're not doing that crappy AstroTurf. That just makes me really happy. And I love the fact that the chair didn't want to change the proposal officially, but make a note. And so we do love this city. We do care about this city. That's why we serve. That's why we read these reports. That's why we show up. That's why we're sitting here right now. So I, like the commissioner down there, will be supporting the motion because I don't see any reason not to. And I know you've had to jump through a million hoops, and there's probably a rigorous process, so I applaud you for making it through. I hope you will be a great addition to our community if this passes, and really respect the people around there, follow through with all of the nice thoughts that you're giving in your presentation. I hope that's reality, and you're making our city a better place. You're employing people. You're doing all the things you said you're going to do. I hope that's reality. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Tabor. With that, unless anyone else has any additional thoughts or ideas, Anna, roll call vote, please.
Sorry, just one moment. Chair Arith,
Yes.
Vice Chair Toller,
Yes.
Commissioner Andrade,
Yes.
Commissioner Zick,
Aye.
Commissioner Tabor.
Yes.
That motion carries 5-0 with Commissioner Rojas absent and Commissioner Vivar recused.
All right. Thank you very much, Anna. That decision is final unless appealed to the City Council within 7 days. Congratulations and welcome to the city. Thank you. So with that said, I think we've come to the point where maybe we should take a 5 to 10 minute break before we get into the next sermon. So thank you. We'll see you in a few minutes. Welcome back to the Planning Commission meeting of March 27, 2023. I call the meeting to order, and I'll ask Anna to read the title for the public hearing item number 2, please.
Public hearing item number 2, planning application 21-37 for a retail cannabis storefront business wood delivery located at 2146 Newport Boulevard, Unit C and D, OTC Ventura LLC. Please note, we have not received public comments on this item. This is a call for any ex parte communications.
Thank you, Anna. I'll go ahead and start to my right, Commissioner Zick.
During the break, which I didn't need, I took an opportunity to talk to the applicant because we don't have a lot of people in the audience, but we did not talk about his application.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Andrade? Commissioner Tabor?
No.
Okay, Commissioner Vivar? Vice Chair?
Nope.
Okay, and during the break that I needed, let's see. I did speak with the applicant, Mr. Maddox, today for about 10 minutes. And I also talked to a representative from the UFCW as well. So with that being said, I will now turn it over to Mr. Yeager to present the item.
All right. Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. I'm Chris Yeager, Associate Planner here with the City of Costa Mesa. The application before you, it is a conditional use permit to establish a retail cannabis storefront and delivery operation at 2146 Newport Boulevard. This would require a state license type 10, and OTC Ventura LLC is the business name, or off the charts. This map before you, you saw a little earlier today. The current application we're looking at is the blue dot, relatively center. The other one was on the left side. So the applicant has successfully completed the initial application steps, including the pre-application and cannabis business permit review before submitting their CUP application. If the CUP is approved tonight, the applicant would continue on to the remaining steps, including issuance of permits and the CBP. So the proposed storefront, it is located at 2146 Newport Boulevard. The subject property is zoned C1, which is a local business district, commercial zone. Existing development on the property consists of an approximately 6,000 square foot single-story multi-tenant commercial building with 4 tenant suites. The proposed storefront would occupy suites C and D. And the property, it is surrounded by other commercially zoned properties, as well as the 55 freeway and Newport Boulevard to the west, and the project site, it is approximately 30 feet from an R1 neighborhood on Rural Lane. The screen in front of you, there's some photos of the existing property. It shows the current conditions of the building. The building was constructed in 1980 and is currently occupied by 2 uses, including a massage business and a car detailing retail business. The 2 suites for the proposed cannabis retail use, they previously housed a fitness studio and a contractor office prior to their vacation in 2020. The existing temporary fence that you see on the screen, it will be removed after the use is established. The proposed location of the retail storefront, it is shaded in red on the site plan here. Per the city's shared parking analysis, the site would require 27 parking spaces. Once the project has been completed, the parking lot will feature 26 parking spaces, and it will have a bike rack, which is credited as 1 parking space. Therefore, the total number of required parking spaces would be provided on site. The project does propose that delivery vehicles for the delivery operation would be stored off-site and would only visit the property to pick up and finish deliveries. The applicant proposes a variety of site enhancements, including modifying landscaping throughout, including planting 13 new trees, repaving and restriping the parking lot, and installing that bike rack. The building itself is proposed to be refinished and painted. The proposed floor plan includes two major areas, the retail sales area in the back of house. The green area on screen is the retail area, and that does include a check-in lobby. The remainder of the building would be dedicated towards back of house areas shown in red, and this would support the retail and delivery operations. The facility has one public customer entrance, which is at the front of the building facing Newport Boulevard. And there is one access-controlled entrance and exit for licensed vendors and employees, which would directly access the parking lot in the rear. The other two entrances would remain locked at all times. The license premise, it is approximately 350 feet from the Crossing Church, which recently began operating a daycare. The walking distance between the two properties is approximately 1,500 feet, and it is separated by the 55 freeway and Newport Boulevard. We were kind of getting at it earlier, but the municipal code stipulates that no cannabis retail storefront use shall be located within 1,000 feet from a child daycare and other sensitive uses that are in operation at the time of submission of a completed cannabis business permit application. The daycare became licensed and began operating in 2022, and the completed business permit application was submitted and reviewed in 2021. Therefore, the requirement was satisfied. In addition, the project is within proximity of residential uses. The parking lot for the project site is located within feet of the Station Master House, which is the oldest home in Costa Mesa. And that is located on the commercial property directly to the rear of the project site. On the map you see the project site is outlined in red, the Station Master House is outlined in green. In addition, that R1 neighborhood on Rural Lane is outlined in yellow. Staff does propose specific conditions in order to ensure that there are no undue burdens on the residential zones and uses, including limiting the business hours from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. And ensuring that garbage is only thrown out from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. because the trash enclosure is adjacent to the Station Master House. In addition, there's other conditions to protect the uses, including having a parking lot be monitored and that loitering be prohibited and monitored within 50 feet of the subject property. The applicant provided a detailed business plan, which was evaluated by the city's cannabis consultant, HDL. And the plan includes the owner's professional experience, proof of capitalization, pro forma, and day-to-day operations. A security plan was also reviewed and reviewed by staff and HDL. And it was determined that the appropriate security measures were included to address city and state requirements. In addition to the aforementioned conditions, there are more than 50 standard conditions of approval related to the Measure Q use. For example, on-site consumption is prohibited, age restrictions are in place, they need to maintain compliance with state law, and the CBP will need to be renewed as required. With that, staff recommends that the Planning Commission adopt a resolution to find the project categorically exempt from CEQA and to approve the planning application subject to the conditions of approval. Happy to make myself available for questions. The applicant has also prepared a presentation for you, so they can go over that whenever you're ready.
Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Yeager. I appreciate it. Commissioners, do we have any questions, starting with Commissioner Tabor?
The diagram shows that it looks to me that there's part of the building that just says adjacent tenant, not a part. Is that currently empty?
So those are the adjacent suites which house the massage use and the retail car detailing shop.
And they're going to remain tenants?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, Commissioner Tabor?
Oh, no.
Okay, great. Commissioner Vivar.
Yes, I do have a couple questions. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. I do have a couple questions. So, regarding the station master house or whatever it's called, so you mentioned that it's commercially zoned, and so I'm just curious: was the land under the residence rezoned at one point in time? Was it a residential zone at one point, or was the house brought to the current site while the land under it was still zoned for commercial use?
Great. So the house was originally constructed in Santa Ana at the Santa Ana train station, and it was moved to the current location prior to the city zoning. So at this point, the house is legal non-conforming with the zoning there.
So it was. I'm guessing this. What I take from this is that when the land was zoned, it was zoned commercial, even though there was a residential sort of house on it, basically, right?
That's correct.
Okay. So the staff report mentions that the land use area is intended for complementary land uses. Can you define what that means, please?
I don't believe it's defined in our city code. However, complementary land use would just be a land use which does not negatively affect another one.
Oh, so not complementary as in they're supposed to kind of have foot traffic or regular traffic between them, right?
Without a definition in the code, I would hate to answer a question speculatively.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, and final question. So the code has the sensitive land use restrictions for Measure Q facilities. And as you explained, this one was, there's a separation of SR 55 and Newport Boulevard from the daycare to this proposed use. So I get that. But so I'm curious generally, if a sensitive land use is within the distance requirements for sensitive land uses, does that mean that the conclusion is that the proposed cannabis use in that sort of theoretical case would be an impact on the health, safety, and welfare of the community? Because when I was reading the staff report, it seemed to draw the conclusion that because there is the distance requirement, because there is the SR 55 sort of dividing or in the way between the proposed Measure Q facility and the daycare, that it seems to then draw the conclusion that there is no health, welfare, or safety impact.
Commissioner Vivar, I'll try to take a stab at
Sure.
your question, if you don't mind.
Sure, of course.
So the way that the process works is the pre-application process is where staff really focuses in and on the sensitive uses that surround the properties. And at that time, it's basically staff goes through a critical review of the surrounding uses and confirms that there's not one there. And if there is one there, at that point, staff recommends that the applicant not continue on. It'll certainly end in a failure based on compliance with the code or lack of. I don't know if that answers your question specifically, but from a perspective of compatible uses or similar uses, certainly it might not be right down that road, But from some of the other findings with regards to the requirements of the CUP and the findings that it's consistent with the general plan, the last one, it wouldn't comply with that one because it wouldn't be compliant with the general plan, and that the zoning code is part of the general plan.
So in theory, if we were to see an item up here on the Planning Commission where there was a sensitive use within the distance requirements, you're saying that it would sort of conflict with the general plan codes, but would it also be a finding of incompatibility with the sort of health, safety, and welfare clause that we look at?
Yeah, that's where I think staff would definitely make that conclusion with regards to that finding. The only one thing I might want to add in is if the city attorney could chime in a little bit. And I think we would be, if forced, I think we would bring the application forward. But certainly long before the application process through, we'd be informing the applicant that we'd have concerns with processing based on conformance of the code.
Right.
But from the perspective of the forced issue, if that's part of your question, I'd have to have the city attorney chime in.
Okay. I think that's it. I think you answered my question, Mr. Drapian. Thank you. And that's it from me, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Vivar. Vice Chair.
I don't have any questions right now.
Okay, Commissioner Andrade. Commissioner Zick.
Thank you. So let me follow on that most recent line of questioning having to do with this sensitive use separation requirement. First of all, another great report, great analysis. I appreciated it. I'm always appreciative of your work. I would say it's fortunate for the applicant from the standpoint of the separation requirement that their application was deemed accepted prior to the state issuing this license for the daycare facility. Of course, we're a year later and the application is only in front of us at this point, but the way you do the bookkeeping for these dates, this would appear to meet the separation requirement. The question I have, which relates to that, is based on some discussion that the city council had at the time they were putting this ordinance together, and it might have preceded you. But there was a concept that Mayor Stevens was interested in exploring. And he didn't have this specific application in mind, but this would have been Exhibit A for the point he was interested in. And that was the concept of an impenetrable barrier, like the 55. So yeah, 300 feet across, there's a daycare center, and minus this issue of these dates being what they are, this applicant would be out of luck in terms of that separation requirement. The idea of the impenetrable barrier would be that you just flat can't get from here to there without going all the way around as your diagram showed. So my question is, and it may be a question for the city attorney, but whoever wants to handle it. If these dates didn't line up conveniently the way they did, and if the applicant came forward with this application and your recommendation was to deny based on separation requirements, and we didn't accept that recommendation and approved it, would the city council have the authority to approve our approval, even though technically it would not meet separation requirements? Can they change their own rule? That's basically my question. I understand it's hypothetical, and I know lawyers hate hypotheticals, but I really wanted to understand this aspect of it. I apologize in advance, Mr. Tarquin.
Vice Chair Dick, thank you for your question. Generally, if it's written in the ordinance without any mechanism to deviate from it, there typically is not a legal path to deviate from the ordinance in a hypothetical sense. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you. Okay, on this, thank you for that. So on this station master house, is it actually occupied as residential?
So in the staff site visits, we were unable to talk with any residences. However, the property was sold about 7 to 10 years ago as a residential property with other commercial uses on site.
Okay, and then my last question, if you could help explain this to me, and it's at the top of the staff report, page 3. Oftentimes when you indicate what the zoning is for a site and then explain what the general plan land use designation is for a site, the wording is very similar. It's intuitive, it makes sense. But in this case, with the site being zoned as C1 and the general plan land use designation being commercial residential, could you explain what that land use designation means in terms of which is, if we were to get into questions of compatibility, I'd be interested in knowing what is the stronger characterization of the land use right? Is it the zoning or the general plan land use designation?
So both the zoning and the general plan land use designation, they do play a part in all projects. This specific area of the city along Newport Boulevard, there have historically been overlays which allow for mixed-use residential uses, and that's where the commercial residential land use comes from. It allows for both commercial uses, and the land use designation would also allow for residential uses, and that's what you see is developed along Newport Boulevard.
So it's the overlay that explains why the land use designation carries residential and the zoning does not?
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Zick. And I have no questions, so thank you, Mr. Yeager. Seeing no other questions, I will now open up the public hearing and ask the applicant to come up. And if you will, please state your name for the record. Let us know if you have read the staff report, the conditions of approval, and do you agree to them? Podium mic on. Okay.
There we go. My name's Sean Maddox. I have read the staff report and conditions of approval, and I do agree.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Maddox. The floor is yours if you'd like to make a brief presentation.
Thank you. I'd like to start with thanking Mr. Yeager for his report and for staff's recommendation. Next, thank you to the commissioners and chair for having me here tonight and for reviewing this project. I'm here tonight to represent myself as well as Off the Charts for a proposed project at 2146 Newport Boulevard. Off the Charts has been approved for a location over on Harbor Boulevard before. Some of the commissioners were here at the time and some of you are new, so I'm happy to go through some of the ownership background so you guys can get a feel for who they are. Off the Charts is a family-owned and operated cannabis store. They're probably bigger than the 1 to 2 shop stores that came in earlier today, but much smaller than the chains that I think have been decried by some people in the industry. Currently, they're positioned with 6 operational locations, 1 in Vista, California, another in Winter Haven, 2 in Palm Springs, and 2 in Los Angeles. We have a pending location opening in Costa Mesa in the next 3 to 6 weeks, and upcoming locations in San Francisco, National City, Hemet, Riverside, Corona, Los Angeles, and Santa Rosa. We've also recently expanded out of state with locations opening in New Jersey, Ohio, Michigan, Mississippi, and New Mexico. Well, it sounds like a long list. I think one of the important things to know about this company is that it is family-owned and operated. They've been able to expand based off of the merits of their work and operations. They haven't had to take on outside investors. They're not beleaguered by debt. And that allows them to be nimble in operating and allows them to be a community-first operator, which I think is really important. I myself am a partner in Off the Charts and this location. I've worked with them for 4 years now, almost 5. I'm also an Orange County resident. And so, having a business in Orange County that I think is community forward, especially in a sensitive use industry, is important to me. It's also, I think, a benefit to the project given that I live in Laguna Beach with an office in Newport Beach. So serving as a community liaison will allow somebody who's, an Orange County resident to be within earshot if any issues do arise. Fortunately, to date, we have had no issues arise at all 6 other locations, and we hope that to be the case here. The proposed operations include retail storefront and delivery. Next slide. Quickly go over the floor plan, which Chris showed you guys, so I'm not going to go too much into it. If you look at this, the upper left-hand corner of the plan is where guests would enter. This actually is on Newport Boulevard. Guests entered in through the lobby with age verification occurring once in the lobby as well as before retail checkout. The back of house operations include a break room, dispatch room, storage room, and office. Next slide, please. This, of course, is the site plan. It's an interesting site. I think it's a good site for the proposed use. There's a lot of security benefits to the site. It is somewhat self-contained, so there's not overlap or driveways going on to adjacent businesses. There is an existing easement that goes to a property behind us. We did speak to one of the occupants of that property during our community outreach who was in support of the business. As was mentioned in the staff report, there are 27 parking spaces, 26 plus a bike rack, which conforms. Our 2 neighbors have been there for a while, and it sounds like are going to continue to be there. They're pretty supportive of the proposed use, mostly because, as you guys saw in the slides, this site has kind of come under disrepair. The fence that was put up for homelessness issues, and that is one of the major feedbacks that we got in community outreach is the opportunity to come in as a regulated business that has robust security and surveillance that could help curtail some of the homelessness issues. Next slide, please. Just some images of interiors and renderings of other stores of Off the Charts. I'd like to draw your attention to the left-hand column middle picture. This is probably something similar to what we would do with the proposed exterior of the site, minus the extensive glass. Probably will be as little glass frontage as possible for security purposes, with some into the lobby available. Next slide, please. Just a quick breakdown of the ownership team. As I mentioned earlier, Off the Charts is a family-owned and operated business. It started with husband and wife ownership team, Norman and Darlene Youssef, when they launched their first retail store in Vista, California. Norman is the CEO. He used to manage the store in Vista. Since opening 6 locations with plenty to follow this year, he now serves as kind of a overall management supervisor of all the stores. He is at each location at opening. The business is successful because of the way that he has kind of implemented customer procedures. And so with each store that opens, he's typically around for the first 2 to 4 weeks to ensure that staff is properly trained and implements kind of the customer service values that are important Off the Charts. The wife side of the husband-wife team, Darlene Youssef, is the chief operations officer. She does all of the back of house, so she deals with payroll, HR, inventory, staffing, benefits, you name it, she does it. If it's not on the retail floor, her and the team that's now been built out are on top of these things. I myself, Sean Maddox, am chief compliance officer. I'm also general counsel for Off the Charts. I run a business and compliance consulting firm, Green Consulting Partners, and have been in the industry for 6 years now. I've helped licensees get licensed in 10 states with over 150 licenses at both the local and state level to my name. I think of importance going back to my ownership in this location is compliance is foremost and forefront for us. And so being able to be this close to an operation is extremely unique. I do represent some clients in Santa Ana and have a great rapport with their code enforcement. So proximity to operational locations has been a real benefit to my business and able to kind of keep things compliant. The other owner on this application is Ash Capital. Ash Capital is our Measure X owner. They've actually been a manufacturing and distribution partner of Off the Charts for a couple of years now. Off the Charts is their biggest retail account throughout the state. So when Costa Mesa decided to go retail, Ash Capital is not a retail operator, so it made a lot of sense for them to reach out to Off the Charts to be their retail partner. Next slide, please. Lastly, and probably most importantly, community integration and security. Costa Mesa is pretty innovative in terms of Orange County jurisdictions and putting forth cannabis retail and commercial zones. I think that imputes an increased onus on owners and businesses to ensure that we're integrating into the surrounding community and doing everything necessary. Obviously, the I think 76 conditions of operations make us comply and avoid nuisances, but I think at the end of the day, it's up to the business operator and the way that they operate businesses to do this. Off the Charts has 6 operational locations and has never had a compliance issue. With respect to our proposed location, we have had extensive outreach efforts. Those started as much as 8 months ago when one of the owners went door to door and introduced themselves to neighboring businesses. It was at that time that we were introduced to Dr. Aaron Benes, who is one of the occupants of the parcels that is reachable through the easement on site, and he was in support of the project. We've had 2 sets of mailers, both in English and Spanish. The first set went out in late December, early January. We only received 1 phone follow-up on that mailer. The second was sent out in early February as we got closer to a CUP hearing date. That one included an on-site open house to which only 1 neighboring property and business owners showed up. As mentioned earlier, really the outreach and feedback that we've got about this project has mostly been positive, and a lot of it is relating to curbing the homelessness issues in the surrounding area and the ability to occupy a space that's been occupied for over 2 years, tear down that fence, put in some new landscaping, and really beautify that corridor of Newport Boulevard. Additional neighborhood integration activities include employee volunteer participation. We've been doing this for a while, so the presenter today was not the only one who does this, but we do have paid time off for volunteer participation with local associations, and have done that at all 6 of our stores so far. We also focus on local hiring. It's hard to put a number on it. All of our current locations across the board are over 60%, which is pretty big because we are in some smaller communities and it's harder to hire local when you don't have a lot of staff. Costa Mesa is obviously a very robust community, and we will focus efforts on local hiring. I think our smallest location right now does over $1 million in wages, so I think that'll be a big benefit to the local community once we get up and operating. Off the Charts is a current member of the Costa Mesa Chamber of Commerce. And in addition, we also host on-site workshops and events. This has to do with anything from health and wellness to, dosing recommendations, safe use, addiction protocols, and things of that matter. Lastly, well, not lastly, but on the community outreach and integration, nuisance mitigation, it's contained in the conditions of approval, but important nonetheless. Odor control, activated carbon filters in a negative pressurized space. I'm sure you guys have heard it 1,000 times. It's industry standard. The nice thing about these locations in retail, everything's prepackaged, so there's not a lot of odor, but those HVAC systems that suck in air at a rate that's quick enough to create negative pressurization ensures that if a door is open, air comes in, it doesn't go out. The only air leaving the facility is through our HVAC system and a carbon filter. On top of that, we will have a traffic control plan. Again, it's a unique site in that it's pretty self-contained, so the traffic will be self-contained. The neighboring parcel that does have an easement actually has a gate that closes and is closed most during business hours. Lastly, I've mentioned it at least twice already, but community liaison 24/7, I'm an Orange County resident. I will be the community liaison for the first months of operations. If we find a local manager and upgrade them into the management chain, they might take that over. But regardless, my name's attached to this project. I'm not going anywhere. Planning has my number, and I'm here if there's any issues, and we'll continue to be here. Finally, on security, an important point for all of these operations. I know that there's robust requirements through the CUP process, but we're fortunate to work with Eudora Enterprises, veteran-owned security company. We've worked with them for 5 years. The plan is to have 2 part-time and 2 full-time guards. There will be 1 guard on site 24 hours a day. Probably at least, well, not probably, there will be at least 2 guards during all hours of operations, upwards of 3 during high traffic times. Guards will be posted at the entrance, retail floor, as well as a roving and exterior sweep guard. This prevents things like on-site smoking or people leaving the premises and smoking nearby, as was discussed at the earlier presentation. And then surveillance, indoor and outdoor, closed-circuit TV cameras, facial recognition capability, both indoor and outdoor. Outdoor also has license plate reading capabilities. We've got ceiling and wall-mounted motion detection units, which will help with any, unapproved entrance. All of our sites have uninterruptible power supplies in case of a power outage so that our security tapes can continue to run. We also use card readers for secure and limited access areas. This allows us to monitor staff and prevent people from going into areas of the store that they're not approved to have access on. Another function of this is that all of our RFID cards are specifically tailored to an employee. So if an employee tries to access an area that they're not allowed to, we will know about it. If an employee accesses an area that they are allowed to and a diversion event happened, we would know about it. Luckily, we haven't had to use that aspect of it, but it's a very robust security system and has allowed us to stay in compliance at all of our other locations. Lastly, just to sum up, again, I appreciate the staff's report and recommendation. I do think that this is it's a good project. It's a good project for the city. The site lends itself to improvement. There's been, rampant homelessness in the area per the fence. So we're hopeful for staff approval today or commissioner approval today so we can move forward with the project. I'm here to answer any questions you guys have.
Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Maddox. Commissioners, do you have any questions of the applicant, starting with Commissioner Tabor? Commissioner Bovar.
Yeah, Mr. Maddox, thank you for your presentation. You mentioned something earlier about a store on Harbor Boulevard. So is that in Costa Mesa? Is that owned by your?
Yeah, Off the Charts has a location approved on Harbor and Adams. I think that was approved last June and should be operational in the coming weeks.
Right. That's Suite C through E, if I remember correctly, correct?
I believe you're correct.
Okay.
Good memory.
So my colleague Commissioner Zick asked an interesting question earlier today, which I'm going to pose to you. So what different products would this store be offering from the site already approved by us on Harbor and Adams, and what will your shop offer differently from the now 18 approved applications, including the one that we just saw an hour ago?
So to the competitive advantage that Commissioner Zick brought up earlier, it's not the difference in products across our stores, it's actually the uniformity and the ability to have 2 locations that service the Costa Mesa community. This is a very large city and has a very large geographic span. We are not the first operator to propose 2 stores. I think Stizzy's been approved for 2 separate locations, and it's a very similar thought pattern of this is a big town. There's a lot that goes on between Harbor, Newport, 55, and 17th, and so being able to have some geographic spread across the city allows us to serve, multiple neighborhoods and residents within the city. So mostly it's the geographic span that's the competitive advantage, not the differentiation in product offerings.
Right. I'm sure you're aware that there are currently approved applications that are also along Newport Boulevard, not too far away from you are. So how do you plan to maintain that competitive advantage to other cannabis retailers that are literally down the street?
I mean, I think it starts with staff. Again, family-owned business. Norman's there to train everybody for that first month, and that family-owned environment is instilled on staff from the get-go. I think what's allowed us to be competitive in saturated markets like Palm Springs that has no cap on licenses, but we have 2 successful stores out there, is that community environment. We have regular customers that come back, not only because of our staff services, but also our product selection. We are not vertically integrated, so we don't have to sit there and say, hey, you have to buy this product because this is our best margin. We scour the marketplace. We see what customers in certain jurisdictions like more than others. We work with our vendors to really get best pricing on products. So it's another competitive advantage that we have is large, high volume, a lot of SKUs and best pricing. So if you're interested in consuming, you've got a place where you've got about your biggest variety available with very knowledgeable staff who are going to treat you like family.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Maddox. And that's it for me, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Vivar. Vice Chair?
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Andrade? Commissioner Zick?
Thank you. Mr. Maddox, you said something when you were talking about on-site workshops that caught my attention. I don't know if it was the quiet part out loud that caught my attention. You mentioned addiction protocols. Could you elaborate on what you were referring to?
So what we do is we have pamphlets available for signs of addiction or overuse. So if you or a family member are showing or indicating any signs, we have that available. It's essentially part of responsible usage guidelines. Like any controlled substance, there is a possibility of somebody overusing. So it's important for our staff to have protocol and guidelines to educate the public on signs of addiction and substance abuse. We consider that our responsibilities as kind of stewards of a regulated industry.
Interesting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Zick. And in the spirit of the line of questioning I had earlier with the first applicant, would you mind telling us a little bit about your labor peace agreement or the nature of anything that surrounds it, please?
Yeah, so we do have existing labor peace agreements at 3 of our 6 operational stores, and the other 3 are coming online. We do work with it's UFCW, who I think is who you met with. They're pretty standardized across the industry. Our clients in Santa Ana use them. They're very good, and essentially the state requires a labor peace agreement for any time people have over 20 employees. I think the city sticks within that regimen as well. We typically put it in place at 10 employees, and really that agreement just allows that labor union to come into the premises and talk to employees about unionization. We've always been really open to it. It has not been adopted unionization at any of our stores, but again, we continue to have those agreements at all of our operational locations.
Great, thank you, Mr. Maddox. And just to give you a little bit of background, it's not something that we've typically asked in the past, but it seems like the more we participate in these applications, new information comes in. So you just happen to be here on the night when it met our fancy to ask. So thank you for that. And I'll also make a similar comment to what I did earlier in that I do appreciate you having your open house and your mailers in Spanish as well. I know that that's not a requirement on you, but it is something that I think shows some good practices there. So thank you. And that's all for me, sir. Thank you. So commissioners, unless you have any other questions. Yes, Commissioner Zick.
I have a follow-up question for staff. None more for the applicant.
Okay. I think we're going to open up to, we can ask the question for staff, Commissioner Zick. Thank you, Mr. Maddox.
Following up on this licensed daycare, do you know when the Crossing Church applied for a license for their daycare facility?
So we don't have the details on when they applied to the state. However, the state did approve their license in spring 2022.
Okay. And is this separation requirement relative to daycares, licensed daycares, is that a state requirement or was that only a city requirement as part of our ordinance?
You know, I'm not clear if it's part of the state ordinance, but it is part of our local ordinance for certain. It's within our code. And the exact language says that is an operation at the time of submission of a completed cannabis business permit application.
That answers both the questions that I was going to ask you. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Zick, and thank you, Mr. Dropkin. I will now move this on to open the public comment period. So if there's anyone here in chambers that wishes to speak, feel free to come up to either podium. All right. I see maybe a couple here. And just so you know, you have 3 minutes to speak, and at the 1 minute mark, you'll hear a little chime that'll go off. So yes, ma'am.
Okay, hi. My name's Lynn. I live in one of the neighboring streets. I would be opposed to a cannabis retailer going in here. Looking at that map, it looks like there's many that have either been approved or are open along that stretch of Newport Boulevard. And then also just the proximity to the neighborhood right there in that the aerial shot, you can really see how close it is. I feel like, especially hearing about all the security that's needed at this business, it just makes me feel like it's not a good fit for our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Does anyone else in chambers wish to speak? Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Johann Gout. I'm actually one of the recipients that lives in the yellow box that's actually on one of the charts. So in one sense, excited about the renovation of the area because as the gentleman mentioned, it's gotten really bad. The one thing, what I'd like to try and figure out is if there's any kind of a clause of something that starts to put an undue burden on us as those homeowners, that it's on their onus to fix that, be it security, better walls, better lighting, obviously not lighting in my backyard, but anything that should the operation start, that they know that they'll come and do what they can do. The hotel there, I don't know if people will kind of try and head into the hotel, you know, to potentially use the product, but just something that says, hey, you know, we have a benchmark of where the location is now, how the area is. If we start to see these type of things, that it's on their onus to address that. So the great news is I didn't know about the 24-hour security, so I think that's going to keep, that's definitely in a good direction. So that's it.
All right. Thank you very much, sir. Yes, sir.
Hello. I'm the last one, don't worry. My name is Mark Arguera, and I've been leasing the property next to the proposal business for a little over 25 years. So I really don't want to talk too much, but I think Mr. Sean Madlick, UC Berkeley, and UCLA. I don't want to fight a powerful attorney in Newport Beach. But first, the application is wrong. I lease units B and C, and their application should be D and E. You got it? I started leasing the first unit about 20-something years ago, and I expanded to the B. So my units are 2 units together, B and C. So the application is wrong. If you want to take a note of that. Yeah? Then I've been living in Costa Mesa for a long time. I own a house near Paularino. My 3 daughters went to high school, to Costa Mesa High School. So I do love this city. I'm also a soccer coach, volunteer for AYSO and clubs and for the Paularino School. And I am 62 years old, And my father once made me swear that I will never smoke, drink, do drugs, or smoke marijuana. To these days, I can tell you that I kept my word. Might not mean nothing to you guys, but it means a lot to me. Regarding to the house behind the business is really close to the facility. And it's owned by Aaron, who's been my customer since he was in high school. And I got a phone number if you guys want to talk to him. I got his phone number. My main concern in that property is the parking. I don't know how do you guys map the parking, but it gets pretty crowded. In the back of the parking alone, with the previous landlord, we have 3 incidents. Of course, we solve it internally because, you know, that's the way.
Sorry, sir, your time's up. That was 3 minutes. No, I'm sorry. We have to just give everyone 3 minutes. We appreciate it, though. Thank you. Is there anyone else in chambers who wishes to speak? All right, seeing none. Anna, do we have anyone on?
No, there's not, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. In that case, I'm going to go close the public comment portion of the hearing and ask commissioners if you have any further questions for the applicant. All right, seeing none. Mr. Maddox, you're welcome to make any closing comments if you'd like, sir.
Thanks. Not much to close on my end. Just wanted to address, I guess, the comments from the public. One to Mr. Gout, who brought up the potential of us contributing to any increased measures that they needed to input. We'd definitely be open to do so. I think we're the last item on the agenda today, so I'm happy to provide you with my contact information and, you know, be in communication about that. I do know access to those residential areas are through the parcel behind us as well as Bay Inn. That doesn't belie the fact that, you know, it's our responsibility to make sure that the neighborhood continues to be safe. And I think on the other community member whose fear of security protocols suggest a dangerous business, these are requirements by the city. We've never had a security incident at any of our locations that have arisen to a, you know, public danger. We have these things in place to protect the public, and, you know, given the current state of the property, we do feel that we'd be bringing in, you know, increased safety for the surrounding areas. And lastly, Mark, who is our neighbor, I'd love to talk to you afterwards. Obviously, parking is an issue for most retail and commercial businesses, and it's something we'd like to consider and discuss with you and be in communication. And that's really kind of just our commitment and obligation to neighbors and community is we will be here, I will be here, my information will be available. So any of these things that could arise, we'd like to nip them in the bud, pun intended, and that's it. So any further questions, I'm happy to answer.
Right, thank you very much, Mr. Maddox, appreciate it. Commissioners, do you have any further questions for staff? Yes, Commissioner Tabor.
Actually, I have a question for Mark from the public, the neighbor guy. Mark? So I wasn't clear. Do you run the massage business or the detail business or both?
No, the massage business is a separate business. We do the retail sales on car care products, and I'm the owner, and my wife and I.
And you've been there for 25 years in that location?
Little over 25 years, yeah. I should have bought the building.
You should have. So are you saying that routinely there's, your parking lot is full?
It's kind of crowded, and, you know, we've been fighting through that. And the problem is the massage, because these people, when they go to the massage, they're there for an hour, hour and a half each car.
Okay.
But in my business, people go 5-10 minutes and they leave, and I'm assuming your business is the same way. So, but it's just a concern.
Okay, thank you.
Thank Thank you. Any other questions, Commissioner Tabor?
Yeah, for staff, when we were vetting that location, did we observe that the lot was continually crowded or?
In the handful of site visits I've conducted, I've seen a surplus of extra open parking spaces.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? All right, seeing none, I will now close the public hearing, and maybe in the spirit of what we did the first time around, if you'd like to have a conversation now that the public hearing is closed, I'm certainly welcome to doing just that. So if we can have it be conversational, yes, Commissioner Vivor.
Yeah, first of all, I just wanted to thank Marco for attending tonight. I think that it's important for us to hear from him, from the other residents who are here. It's always important for Planning Commission to hear about what's going on the ground from people who live in the area or own businesses near any item that we look at here. Regarding the distance requirements, I'm glad that the SR 55 is between the approved daycare facility at the Crossing Church and this proposed site. And I do understand that the way the ordinance is written is that at the time of approval of the Measure Q application, no sensitive use is operating within the distance requirement areas radii. But I know there's nothing I can do about this, but I will make a comment that it concerns me that there is the possibility for a sensitive use to have been approved and beginning to operate prior to a Measure Q facility even comes to Planning Commission, and that when the staff prepares the presentation, the finding would be that it basically doesn't matter that sensitive use is there because of the language of the ordinance. And so that just really worries me, because in that case, we'd be basically saying that the proposed Measure Q site wouldn't be detrimental in terms of the public health, safety, and welfare. Whereas when on the opposite side, on the other hand, if we do have a sensitive use that is approved and operating prior to the application being deemed complete by city staff, then that finding then would be rightly so that the that application, that site would have a negative effect on health, safety, and welfare. So it just seems to me like a contradiction that we would ever end up in that situation. It's a purely theoretical one, but one that I think we could very well see, seeing as we have 60 plus 70 applications. So it's a concern to me that code is written that way, and that in one instance we would declare that something is materially detrimental, and in another case we wouldn't, only because of kind of some reason on paper rather than what exists in sort of real life. So I don't think a detrimental impact stops existing simply because it isn't on paper. So that's just my comment.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Rivera. Would anyone like to weigh in on those observations or start any others?
I don't know if it follows your conversation protocol, but does anybody know if the Crossing Church was aware that there's a cannabis establishment going in across the freeway when they applied for the daycare permit or whatever it's called?
I can't say when they applied for the permit. However, they did receive a notice from the city for this application, and they did not provide any comments.
I guess if they knew that the establishment was likely to go in and they wanted to proceed with, getting their license for the daycare operation, is it assuming that they didn't think it was a sensitive distance?
I can't speak for the church, obviously, but they did receive a notice. There was no comments from them. I believe one of the commissioners previously mentioned the characteristics of the 55 freeway and the natural barrier. So it's very possible that that was part of the mindset. Certainly from staff's perspective, it is a separate neighborhood.
Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Commissioner Tabor. Anyone else? All right. I think I'll go ahead and comment on what you just mentioned, Commissioner Vivar, in that it seems like up to this point, when we exercise our discretionary authority on approvals and denial, but whether it's an approval or a denial, and we're trying to read through the letter of the law vis-a-vis the spirit of the law, that there are some outstanding things like a natural barrier that, unless they're, these kids can fly across the 55 freeway, there is a pretty sizable barrier. And with the map that Mr. Yeager provided, with it being, if you actually go around, circulate around, it's about 1,500 feet. That's pretty sizable. So at least as far as discretion goes, I'm not telegraphing what should or should not be a discretionary decision in that regard, but just an observation that it appears that everything does check. All the boxes have been checked. The timing of the application and the approval coincides with the code and everything else. So I don't have any personal or, in this case, professional issues with what's being shown here. But I'm certainly happy to hear if anyone else have any additional thoughts.
Just a question for staff. So do we need to clarify the location, right, as Mr. Marcos shared, the number of the unit C and D, is that accurate, or do we need to make an adjustment for the application at all? We have the right locations.
Yeah, so the city records were incomplete in terms of the suite addressing. So we were just going off of what was provided in the application material. Before any permits are issued, we will make sure that it is accurate.
And might also add that one of the conditions requires that a certain amount of addressing be provided on the suites too, so that'll be provided in compliance as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Andrade. If there are no further comments, all right, seeing none, we can entertain a motion if anyone would like to make one. Motion made by Toller.
Yeah. I move that the Planning Commission adopt a resolution to find that the project is categorically exempt from the provisions of CEQA, per CEQA guidelines, and approved planning application 2137, subject to conditions of approval.
Is there a second for that motion? I'll go ahead and second it if you'd like to speak to your motion, Vice Chair.
Sure. This seems pretty straightforward to me. Again, just looking at this technically, and per the findings we're supposed to make, there were some concerns, valid things to bring up from some of the community members. One on security. I heard the way it was presented, four armed guards kind of sounded a little shocking to me, but a on-site security guard is normal for all these applications. And what we've heard from our police department is counterintuitively, this ends up making places safer than before. The other thing was parking. And I hope that the property owner and the tenants can work that one out. I think that's that's an issue for that relationship and not for the government to meddle in. I am glad that I know this area well, and I know it's been problematic for a lot of loitering and drug use on the street and other bad stuff. And a business moving in and getting people going in and out and activity and eyes on the street is going to be a good thing and clean this up. So I'm in favor of approving this project.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chair. And I'll go ahead and keep it brief and say that as far as parking goes, I too believe and hope that the tenants here can come to a mutual agreement. There is also the backstop that the city can enforce certain types of parking requirements as well. So that's also an option. But with everything being weighed here, it appears the burden of proof is on approval. The findings can be made. So with that said, unless anyone else have any other comments, Anna, if we can call the question, please.
One more comment. Can I make one more comment right before
We've already called the question.
Okay, sure.
That motion carries 5-1 with Commissioner Rojas absent and Commissioner Tabor voting no.
All right, thank you, Anna. That decision is final unless appealed to the City Council within 7 days. Good luck, Mr. Maddox. That brings us to old business, which we have no old business or new business, so we'll move on to departmental reports, starting with Mr. Yang in Public Services.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Honorable members of the Planning Commission, it's my pleasure for the Public Works Department to announce the bicycle wayfinding signage project public outreach meeting. I know that Vice Chair Toller has mentioned this at the beginning of the meeting, but it's such a very special event that it bears to be mentioned twice again. So March 28th, which is tomorrow, between the hours of 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. through Zoom webinar, the city will host a bicycle wayfinding signage public outreach meeting. And we encourage everyone to join the Public Works Transportation team for this virtual meeting tomorrow between 6 to 7:30 to learn about the proposed bicycle wayfinding signage here in the city. So we look forward for everyone's participation, and that's it for our Public Works report. So I defer back to the chair.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Yang. I appreciate it. Ms. Lee with Development Services.
Thank you, Chair. None this evening.
All right, thank you. City Attorney, Mr. Preziosi.
No comment this evening, Chair.
Great, thank you. That makes it quick. Well, that brings us to the end of the meeting, and I will now adjourn the meeting to April 10th, 2023. Have a good night.